Before I start, when I realized a few weeks ago that I was following on from Inga, I thought I must contact her and see what she's going to speak about, because we have similar interests and I don't want to be contradicting everything that she said for the last hour. Luckily, she's said everything that I was going to say myself, so I'll go back to bed now and you can take a break. So, thank you for inviting me to your country. It's only my second visit to Ukraine. We've had a wonderful 2 weeks getting here, and we've seen lots of parts of the countryside that we would not have seen if we'd flown into the local airport. Try and work out how this works. Okay, creative challenge for translators. Now, like Inga, I'm a creative translator. I do a lot of work in travel. That's where the similarity finishes, because we are very different people. First of all, to introduce myself. Now, for those people who are expecting this whole presentation to be in 3 languages, sorry, you're in the wrong place. That's the limit of my Russian and Ukrainian. In fact, I'm not quite sure which is which, but there we are. This is me. Forget the oranges. This is also me. I don't have a medical condition where I think I'm 2 different people, but in some ways I probably am, because I'm a translator, just like most of you. I'm also, I hate to use the word, an agency, except I prefer to call myself a company. We have this expression in English about wearing 2 hats. I don't know if that also translates into Russian. Wearing 2 hats means you do 2 different things, and whichever hat you put on, you change your identity. Complicated sometimes, but that's the way it works. So I'm a translator and a company. How is that possible? How can translators look at clients from a different perspective, and why translation companies need to come up with a creative approach to translators? I didn't write that. That was written by the people from UTICamp. That was in their information they put on their website. There it is. It was so good, I thought, I'll use that. So how can we come up with a creative approach to translators? Now, I'm assuming you are translators, most of you. Later on this week, at the second session, the 3, whatever they call it, I'll be speaking more to other agencies or outsourcers or people who provide translation jobs to individual translators and try and convince them of a few things that I believe in myself. And it's this word creative approach, which interests me because I'm a creative person. Creative translation or creative approach cannot always mean creative translation. We've heard a lot about blogging, we've heard a lot about thinking inside, outside, and without a box. But even if you're not a creative translator, your attitude, your mindset, if you like, can be creative, because it can work for all sorts. Okay, it's easy in travel and tourism. That is one of the places where there is so much scope. It's almost necessary to be creative with your translation. However, if you do financial translation, it's not so easy, because the people who actually are creative are the bankers who screw money out of you, saying, yes, our investment is safe for the rest of your life. Well, that's creativity on their side, but it's not much guarantee for you as a member of the public. And of course, medical translation is probably the place where you cannot be creative. I don't touch medical translation, it scares me. just one word could change someone's life. You know, you're performing a knee surgery, and it says, take the left knee, and it should be the right one, and that's it, right? So no cause for creativity. In fact, most medical translators that I know are actually medical people who became translators rather than translators who became medical experts. But back to travel. We all read, we all see, we all familiar with lovely photographs, good text, something which really, really tempts you to go to that place, and then you turn your back and you look the other way, and you see something like that. So you have to cover up what you don't want people to see, and you have to promote the things that you do want people to see. So you don't have to be restricted in your style. It's what you need to do. Well, let's use our brains, and it depends on what you know, of course. It also depends on what you don't know. I'm going to quote now, for you younger people in the audience, I'm going to go back to the year 2002 and quote a famous person, Donald Rumsfeld. In 2002, in the George W. Bush era, he was the Secretary of State in the United States. The fact that he was called Donald, the fact he's American, and the fact he speaks a load of rubbish is purely coincidence. Right? Donald Rumsfeld said, and it sounds stupid, and I apologize to the interpreters, they've got to try and work out what this means. He said, there are known knowns. That is to say, there are things we know. We know. I know this is a microphone. I'm confident about that. No one needs to tell me. I know that. But he goes further. He says, there are known unknowns. There are some things we know, we do not know. I know this is a microphone in English. I do not know what this is in Russian or Ukrainian. I know I don't know it. So it's not a problem. If I need to know it, I will ask you. He goes one step further. He says, there are also unknown unknowns, the ones we don't know, we don't know. Are you with me in the booth there? You're still following this. And those are the things that we don't know are just as important in our job as translators or interpreters as they are in any form of government, finance, defense, everything else. So, although people laugh at Donald for the stupid things he says, he was, unlike the other Donald, a very intelligent man. He just made himself rather a joke, because not of what he said, but the way he said things. He confused people, and I hope you're totally confused now by everything I've said so far. Okay, 3 misconceptions. By misconceptions, I mean what we imagine, but it may not be correct. It may not be true. A misconception is something you think is correct, but it may not be. And first misconception is that all translation agencies are bad. Right. Sometimes if I speak at conferences and I say the word agency, I have to whisper it, because you see people going, ugh, like that. But equally, a misconception is that all translators are good. Well, we know we are. We don't need anyone to tell us, but maybe that's not the same. And machine translation will be the end of our profession. Something also that was mentioned earlier on this morning. Now, before I qualify that, I'm actually going to give an example. It's not in my presentation because it only happened last week in your country on the way here. 2 examples of how machine translation is not going to be the end of our profession. I have to confess, I do use Google Translate. And last week, we were traveling here. We were in a small town somewhere in the middle of Ukraine with a name I cannot pronounce. But there are plenty of towns in Ukraine with names I cannot pronounce, so there's plenty of choice. We found this lovely town to stop in our motorhome, and we found the best restaurant in town. Well, we found the only restaurant in town, so it could have been the best one, it could have been the worst one. It was the afternoon, and you get thirsty in the afternoon. We thought, we'll stop and have a drink. Now, most countries I go to, I can say the word beer in the local language, so that's okay. But to our surprise, there was an English menu. Once the young girl, the waitress, realized that we were looking at her in total amazement when she spoke to us, out came the English menu. And so I did what all translators would do in that situation. You spend 5 minutes looking for typos, context mistakes, syntax errors, all those sort of things, right? Having done that, we ordered a drink. She was delightful. She was the first person I saw in this country who smiled. I now realise she's not the only one, because you're translators, that's how you always smile. We managed. We could have managed with fingers and pointing and that sort of thing, but we managed. And just as we were about to leave, I took out my phone and I typed into it, we're going to come back again this evening. When she came back with the bill, I showed her this. She looked at my scratched, worn-out old iPhone 6 and thought, poor man. Takes out her brand new, shiny Samsung device, taps in something and says, we look forward to seeing you this evening. And we went back the evening, and big wave, big smile, and we managed to order the food. And every now and again, she obviously went into the kitchen and she put something in and came back and said, is there anything else I can get you, sir? In perfect English, or, I hope everything is to your satisfaction, sir. And she'd been using that as a way of communicating. And the second example is in the same town, the same village. We were looking for a museum, and we ended up in totally the wrong place, in the garden of some cottage, and a man came across running to us, very enthusiastic, and we said, museum? He called his teenage daughter. His teenage daughter comes out, we say, museum? Out comes the phone. No, she spoke into it. She spoke into this phone in Russian, showed the screen, and it said, he can take you in his horse and carriage. I thought, what a generation gap, that one technology from the 21st century promoting the technology from the 19th century, but it worked. Both examples of communication, both examples that I did not put any translator out of paid work on those two occasions. Nobody lost their job because I used machine translation. I don't think it's translators who are going to be put out of work. I think it's going to be teachers who are put out of work in future, because they're the ones that have to deal with the things that their students or their kids are using. To go back, all translation agencies are bad. Well, a few are, but most are not. Well, I would say that, wouldn't I? Because I am one if I wear the other hat. All translators are good. Nah, most are, but a few are not. And back to the machine translation, I'm quoting somebody whose name I forget, who once said, machine translation will only be a threat to people who translate like machines. It's here to stay. It will not go away. It is one of those things we have to learn to live with. Now, I'll let you into a secret. You may not have noticed, I am not 25 years old anymore. If I was 25 years old, I would have probably a very different attitude towards things. I'm not at the start of my career. In fact, I'm almost at the end of my second career. So really, what happens in 10 years' time is, okay, somebody else's problem. If I was 25, I would be more concerned, because we have to live, we have to make money we have to earn, and it will be a challenge, I think, more than a threat. And as already has been mentioned, there will always be room for quality translations. Where machine translation is good is for things like the instructions how to use a washing machine, which nobody reads until the washing machine breaks down, and then you can't find the book with the translation. Those things, I think that's fine to let machines do that. Let machines talk about other machines, but the small percentage of quality translations that we can do should keep us in work for long after I'm no longer here. I hope that's more than this week. Okay. So, 3 misconceptions I think are common in our profession, but one fact is rarely considered. Agencies need translators just as much as translators need agencies. I'll go one step further and say probably more than. You can be a translator and work without using agencies. You cannot be an agency and work without using translators. So why are we so afraid of them? Why am I not afraid of them? Right? It's the two hat thing. Why are we afraid of them? Because they like to bully us. What is the secret? The secret to success. That's what you want to hear. That's what you came for. You want to know what I can tell you that's going to make you a successful translator. And you want my advice? That's it. There is no advice to make you a successful translator. That depends on you, the way you work, and the way you think. But secrets? No. Suggestions? Yes. And this is based on the fact that for the 15 years I've been running my translation company, I've had different lives over the past. I started off in education, international education, retrained as a translator, and I've been doing that now for, well, officially 15 years, in reality 20 years before I realised I had to give it a name. Promote your strengths. We're not good at promoting our strengths. We are a modest bunch of people, and I'm now speaking to the 1% of translators who do go to conferences, and not the 99% of translators who don't go to conferences. I hope they're following on the webcast, so they might get some out of this. Promote your strengths and charge what you're really worth. I hear you say, well, how can you do that? Because the agency is king. They're the ones who decide what will pay. And be honest about yourself. Go back to the first one, promote your strengths. Tell them what you're good at. And they could be, these are just 5 random things: accuracy, reliability, quality, efficiency, dedication, creativity. Those are the things that people, whether they're direct clients or translation agencies, that's what they want to know about you. But we don't do that all the time. We tend to say what we're not good at. We tend to promote our weaknesses. Well, we're too honest. We're too honest sometimes about what we think about ourselves and our fellow translators, but the red ones are not what our clients are interested in. But it's sort of people, and we've already had comments about Facebook groups where people moan and groan and say how bad they are and how hopeless they are and everything else. Well, there is a place for that, but promote yourself. Charge what you're really worth is difficult, but it's possible. For a start, we all know the term, I'm sure, bottom feeders. Bottom feeders are the translation agencies, companies who dredge the depths of the translation ocean and try and get everything for the lowest possible price and consequently the lowest possible quality. They are there. If you can't pay the rent, if you have no food left in the cupboard, if your electricity bill hasn't been paid, that's about the only excuse for using bottom feeders. Don't use them because they won't help you. You won't gain any respect by dropping your rates. You will not get job satisfaction, and you will have this feeling that no one takes you seriously as a professional. Again, all very well for me to say that. I'm in the position where now I can pick and choose. I could retire tomorrow and spend the next 6 months traveling around Ukraine instead of the next 3 weeks, but I don't. I could. Most of you are not in that position. There are genuine clients ready and waiting for you. How do you find them? Okay, be honest about yourself. Now, you might think this is obvious. Explain the category of translation you offer. We get, as a company, 10, 20 emails a day unsolicited with CVs from potential translators, even though it says on our website we don't need extra translators. And you get things like, I translate travel, because they know that we do. I translate travel, technical, engineering, medical, legal, and educational. I think, no, you don't. You can't possibly. And if you do translate all those, I don't want you. Tell honestly what sort of translation you offer. And if I get round to reading your CV, which often we don't have time for, if I see one thing there that appeals to me, there's more chance I will contact that person. If I see 5 things that don't appeal to me, in the bin, in the e-bin. Yeah, promote your qualifications, but don't invent them. You see people from certain countries, which I won't mention, who have a list of letters like that after their name. Right? Their name, and then this. And it's probably very true. They've probably got a stack of certificates that high, but as we heard earlier, people don't ask for those. Give yourself enough time to do the job properly. Enough time? What is enough time? You decide. You're the professional. Your client is only the client. And don't be afraid to decline a job. If you can't do it, say, I can't do it. And people will respect you more than if you say, oh, yeah, of course I can do that, yes. And then you turn in a whole load of rubbish and all the arguments about being paid start. And if clients say, we can get that cheaper, say, fine, do it. I saw a nice little cartoon on Close Your Ears, Inga, Things Translators Never Say website just the other day, and it was a painting of the Mona Lisa, the original Mona Lisa, and next to it was a 5-year-old child's drawing of the Mona Lisa, and the caption was, of course we can do it cheaper. If you don't agree with the 5 things I've just mentioned, buy yourself a t-shirt, but make sure it has the words, what is it about the word no that you don't understand? Saying no is not bad. We were taught at school that you should always be positive and say yes, never turn anything down. If you say, I'm not doing that, I can't do that, I don't want to do that, you might annoy people at the beginning, but they'll respect you for it. So, working in a group is my big thing. It's a thing I've been promoting for all the time I've been giving presentations at conferences. I firmly believe in it. Why do I believe in it? Because it worked for me. Working in a group can mean lots of things. It can mean 4 people sitting here together deciding to collaborate, cooperate. It could be a more formal structure, almost approaching a company, but it has huge advantages. And I will list just some of the advantages I found in my experience of working with groups of people. You can share specialisms. We're not all good at everything, but if you know somebody who has more knowledge of something that you're involved with and you can consult with that person, win-win. Now, taking a holiday. I'm here, we are here. We're spending 6 weeks getting here, staying here, going back home, just dropping off in Slovenia for another translation event in the middle of August. My company is still running, my colleagues are still working, I'm still earning money. Ha ha. It's also allowed to be ill. Most translators think it's not, right? Especially if you're a mother and you have 10 cats as well, it's not possible to be ill. It can be possible to be ill, and nothing's worse than working when you're feeling really horrible. But you know, if you don't hand that job in on time, you lose the client. Sharing the costs of administration, it could be the accountant, it could be the website, it could be anything. If you can share things with other people, it lowers the price for you. And you can offer your clients more languages. And to me, that's the most important one, because that's what worked for me. Let me explain a little bit about me. That's this hat me, the translator me. I'm not suggesting we all become a Tower of Babel and we all offer everything to everybody, but it can work. Go back to 2004 when I started my company. It was just me. One client, one language. Me, Dutch into English, because English is my native language, even though I lived most of my life in the Netherlands. It was just me. And that was fine. And that's all I expected it ever to be. It never occurred to me it could grow into the monster it has become today. Frankenstein translations, I sometimes call it. That was 2004. Within 4 years, that had grown. These are the 5 languages that it grew. And it grew simply because one of the first jobs I did, the client was very happy, said, "Great work, Nigel. Can you do it in French?" Which is a good indication of how a lot of clients think about us. You're a translator? Of course you speak every language in the world. So my answer was, no, of course I can't do it, but I know somebody who can. And so within 4 years, it got this rather strange combination of languages. Being in the Netherlands, obviously German, French, English are the obvious ones, but then Spanish and Italian come next, and then Danish. Now yet, why on earth Danish? Well, I'll explain to our Danish friend here. This job was for a company, a publishing company that produces campsite guides. Blank looks. I know this country is bigger than France, and it has 7 campsites, right? But most Western European countries have thousands of campsites, and choosing the right one is quite a skill. The Netherlands, the Dutch people, are the biggest campers in the world. When I say campers, I mean people who go camping or caravanning or tenting, followed by the Danish. They're the second biggest. That's why if you're driving along a country lane in somewhere in France, if you're not stuck behind a Dutch car pulling a caravan, you'll be stuck behind a Danish car pulling a caravan. Okay, so interesting, we still have the same client, and those are still the 5 languages that we do most of. Then it gets a bit stupid. By 2012, we'd expanded to all these. Now, why? Simply because the client asked for it. We did not go looking for, oh, let's do Icelandic, that sounds like fun. No, if an existing client asked for it, we would do it. Simply because if we didn't do it, somebody else might. So to keep that client, we would find the person who could do the translation into that language. A new client, we say, sorry, we don't do that. There are plenty of agencies, companies who do. In our case, to keep the client, to expand with them, to grow with them, we would add languages when requested. And yeah, by 2015, it had got to that, and then it stops. Then it stops, right. I just happen to know a very good Hebrew translator who specializes in travel and tourism, and she was very cheap, actually. But I could see 50 pairs of eyes there looking for the Ukrainian flag. I'm sorry, it's not there, and the reason it's not there is we've never been asked for it yet. If we are, I know exactly where to come. 32 languages, which is what we now offer, sounds like a lot, but actually of the 6,500 estimated languages in the world, 32 is a very small amount. And I say 6,500, I can't prove that, but that's just something I picked up, including one very sad piece of information. There's one language, I forget which it is, there are only 2 people in the world who speak it. Now, if they have an argument or if one of them dies, the other person is going to be very, very lonely. But anyway, of those 32 languages, we actually only make any profit out of the 12 that you see there. The rest is a service. It brings in no extra finance because we don't do enough of it. Do we, Inga? No, we do. Once or twice a year, sometimes. I mean, Farsi, Icelandic, there's not a huge market, especially in the travel industry for those sort of things, but they're there. Hebrew, of course, yes, but I mean, yeah, you got to learn. You have to learn Dutch first, Inga. So the other 20 languages that we offer, we make no money out of it, but it's a service. And it would be very difficult for any of our clients to go somewhere else and find an agency, a company that could offer those languages at a reasonable quality, I hope, and I like to think. I'm very keen on fair trade. Now, fair trade is usually bananas and coffee, but fair trade is something I think also can apply to translation, and I'm quite proud is not the right word. I'm pleased that we work in a fair trade way. What is fair trade? Well, the best example is, being fair to our clients and our translators, but also to ourselves. We're not stupid, right? Being fair to our clients. Talking now about me with this hat on, the translation company, also applies to individual translators who work by themselves. We have an hourly rate. Sam doesn't understand this. 10 years ago when I met Sam, he said, you can't work like that. It's impossible. Sam, here I am, still working like that, and it works a treat. It's certainly in our business because for a start, we're working a lot from Dutch into English. Now, any Dutch text, half the words are in English to begin with. So that's free, yeah? We get those handed to us on a plate. Doing more creative work, sometimes one sentence can take a long time, certainly if you're doing transcreating. Equally, other work has lots of repeats, and it can be done in far less time. The number of words is the same, the amount of time it takes is different. So translators who work with us, for us, have to accept being paid by the hour. They have no choice. Right? Well, they do have a choice. They work with us or they don't. But that is our policy. With clients, we do give them the choice to have an hourly rate or a per word rate, and we explain the difference. We say, we estimate this job, and we're very good at estimating time. We look at the text. Of course, word count is important. We say we think that will take us 3 hours to do. We'll charge you 3 hours. If it takes less time, we'll charge you the time it took. If it takes us more time, that's our fault for estimating it incorrectly. I was going to say misunderestimating. That's a George W. Bush word. Underestimating. It's our problem and it's our cost. Now, certainly, Dutch clients, they love that. If they think they're getting something cheaper than you actually offered it for, they just love that. Okay, psychology works. So you think of your price, you add 10%, and then when it comes to it, you say it took less time than expected. It's going to cost you 10% less than you thought it was going to cost you. They think, great, got a bargain. We do not surcharge for urgent jobs. Crazy, you may think. Well, yep. You know the client that says, it's 5 minutes to 5, it's nearly bureau o'clock on a Friday afternoon, must have this by Monday, can you do it in the weekend? Normally you say, yep, it'll cost you twice as much, 3 times as much, 10 times as much. We say, we'll try and do it We can't promise, but if we do it in a rush, we don't have the time to check it properly. It won't go to a proofreader, but that's your risk, not ours, because you said it's an urgent job. You want it tomorrow, first thing. And they usually say, oh, 1 day later is not a problem. Because we are living in this world where we want everything instantly. You go online shopping and you look for something that says if you order it by midnight, it'll be at your front door tomorrow. Another one says, we can deliver it in 2 days' time. You think, 2 days? 2 days? I want it tomorrow morning. It's probably something you've been thinking about buying for the last 6 months, but because it's offered tomorrow morning, it has got us into that state of mind. We have the same rate for all language combinations, and I was having a discussion with I won't mention her name, but there aren't many Danish translators here in this room today. She said, but that's not fair. Well, she didn't say that. She said it much more nicely. And I have people saying, yeah, you cannot charge the same for different languages. For example, if you live in Norway, the cost of living is very high. If you live in Spain, the cost of living is a lot lower. Well, yes, that's true, but does that mean just because somebody chooses or happens to live in Norway, they get paid more than somebody who is unfortunate to live in a hot, sunny climate with wonderful food? And then what happens if the Norwegian translator just happens to live in Spain and the Spanish translator happens to live in Oslo? Do you then apply the rate to where they come from or where they're going to? Or one of our Swedish translators, he translates Dutch to Swedish, he lives in the Czech Republic. Now, in terms of rates, that's somewhere in the middle, but we pay everyone the same rate. When I translate myself, and that's mostly what I do now, I don't do any administration anymore. When I translate myself, I get paid the same rate that all the translators who work with us get paid the same rate. So there's no question of who's offering the lowest rate, who can beat that person, who's a couple of cents cheaper. Yeah, okay, fine, we don't do that. To my mind, that's part of fair trade. And as I said, we have the maximum price guarantee, that if it costs us more, then we've learned an expensive mistake. And of course, like most companies, our clients can access our platform day and night. We don't work 24/7, but our system does in terms of supplying translations. Very useful if you work with clients in different continents with substantial time differences, that they can upload work during their daytime, which is our night, and we can do it during our daytime, which is their night. So that makes a lot of sense. And it might sound obvious, clear, concise terms and conditions. It's surprising how many translators, individual ones, do not have terms and conditions. We have them. We have a complaints procedure. We've never used it, but we have it. Just by having terms and conditions, by saying to a client, by accepting the job, you accept our terms and conditions, it makes them think you are working in a professional way. You cannot book a flight on a budget airline without ticking that box that says, I realise you're going to screw me for baggage, for meals, for everything else. If you don't tick that box, you don't leave the ground. Being fair to our translators. Now, the other hat, me being a company, we're all paid the same rate. Okay, that's it. And we pay quickly. We pay not 3 days from doing the job. That's impossible because we'd be paying every day of the month. End of each month, we send out a statement to the people who've worked saying, you have worked this or this. If you agree with our figures, that's fine, invoice us. And 3 days after you're getting your invoice, assuming it's not on a Sunday with a public holiday afterwards, we'll pay within 3 days. Why? Because we can. We're selling words. If I was a builder, building a house, I'd have to buy the bricks and the wood and everything before I could start building the house. Selling translations, you don't have to buy those words first before you can use them. So why keep people waiting for their money? We even pay some people in advance if they wish. It might sound strange, but we realise that there are some languages that we use very, very rarely, and we don't want to be paying them tiny amounts after each job. Equally, we don't want to keep them waiting for 6 months before they've earned a decent amount to be paid. So if they want to, and it's entirely their choice, they can accept an advance payment, a bit like a prepaid card for your telephone, and as they use it up, then we take that off the money that they have already been paid. Is it a risk? Yes. Has anybody ever fooled us or cheated us? No. And if we send you an assignment that you don't want or can't do, no problem. By repercussions, I mean we will not say, don't bother coming to us again, we don't need you. And again, we offer our system free of charge to small groups of people if they want to set up their own group. I'll come back to that. An honest working agreement. It's not a contract. You don't have to sign anything, but by accepting an assignment on our system, you accept that working agreement, and it's very honest and clear. It means it shows them what we expect from a translator, but it also shows the translator what they can expect from us. Fair trade. And being fair to ourselves, because we're not stupid, we're not a charity. Yeah, the company that I have with, I think, 108 translators, that was 2 weeks ago when I left home, I don't know how many there are now, very small management structure. I'm not criticizing big companies that have large members of staff, but basically there are only 3 of us who run the company. And one of those is away for 6 weeks having a great time. Our decisions are made by linguists, that word linguists again, not by entrepreneurs, not by administration people. Only the accountant, and actually also the IT person, we hire them in. They're not linguistic people, but the rest of us, we are. What is an excessive profit? I've heard people say they don't get out of bed for less than $1,000. Other people say, well, you know, I can live quite happily on a couple of euros a day. We don't make excessive profits. We make a good living. We make enough, but we're not greedy. You can see I don't dress in the most designer fashion. You know, my Rolex came from the duty-free shop. Okay, we brought our home with us. That's different. And positive feedback. You only know you're doing well if the people who are paying you tell you. Okay, it's nice to get positive feedback from the translators, but sometimes they're not quite as, I won't say honest, but they sometimes say things that they think you want to hear. Right? Oh, I love working for your company. Yep, good. If a client says, we love you doing work for us, then you're more likely to believe them, because they would not say that unless they really meant it. And we support charities and we support non-government organisations. So sometimes we do work, I used to say for free. We don't do anything for free, but sometimes we give 100% discount. And there's a slight difference, a technical difference, because if you do something for free, people don't expect quality. If you say 100% discount, they're not paying, but they're still a client, and they still think they're getting treated like a client. Okay, a business should be compared to and treated like other businesses and services. I could ask for a show of hands, but time is not on my side. You may think that. You may think it's a creative profession and cannot be treated like other businesses and services. Those are 2 opposing viewpoints which I've seen people mention, that it's translators, we're just a business. Yeah? No different to a bank, an accountant, a doctor, anybody else. Others say, no, we are special people. We are translators. Different rules apply to us. Well, you have to combine those 2 and get the happy balance between the 2. I would suggest we are a specialised business, and we rely on a combination of human skills and chickens, and technical innovation. And there's still a lot we can learn from other businesses and services. We sometimes forget that. We sometimes put ourselves in an island and say, this is our job, keep out the rest of you. We can learn from other people, especially on the technical front. But you'll have plenty of chance this week to find out more about the technical front. How do we look at clients from a different perspective? And this thing about coming up with a creative approach is how I started off my session. Some people have an attitude towards the translation industry as this, where you've got them and you've got us. And that's sad, because it shouldn't be like that. It should be, yeah, help, tips, guidance, advice, support, all those sort of things. That's what we should be doing. My advice to other translation companies. Friday I'll be speaking to translation companies. What can I tell them? What is my advice to them? None. It's not my job to tell other agencies, other companies how they should work. And it's not their job to tell me how I should work. So I'm not going to. So next week I'll be trying to convince companies, agencies that that is not the way it should be. That is the way it should be. I'm not suggesting we go around hugging each other. There are other people in our profession who promote hugging. That's not me. But we can do virtual hugs, and we can be nice to each other. It doesn't actually hurt, and it doesn't cost any more money to be nice, as that girl in the restaurant 2 days ago found out. Don't ask translators to do things you wouldn't do. Don't blame them for the mistakes that, not pointing fingers at anyone, that you made, right? Don't promise things that translators are not able to achieve. Yeah, of course that legal translator can easily do a medical translation. No problem, no problem. If they do a good job, tell them. How often do your clients, whether they're agencies or direct clients, how often do they say, great job? I hope they do, but not always. They forget. If it's bad, they'll tell you straight away. Don't keep them waiting for their money. Sounds like common sense, but these are the 5 biggest complaints I have heard in all the 20 or more presentations I've given to translators. These are their 5 biggest complaints. So how to avoid getting on the blacklist, and there is a blacklist. The unpaid test translation. We ask for test translations, of course, so you've got to try out a new translator, but we pay them. I've heard, I don't know, I've never worked with other companies, that some companies exist, they get a job and they send it out to 10 different translators as a test translation. When they come in, they put it all together, free, and they bill the client a few €100 or dollars. Okay, that's a business practice that falls outside the fair trade system that we promote. Don't say, sorry, we can't pay you because the client hasn't paid us. That's not an excuse. It's an excuse, but it's a bad one. Your job was not good. We can't pay you. Now, if the work you did was not good, then you need to be told. But that's not an excuse for not being paid. You need to be have explained to you why that was not a good translation. Not to say, not going to pay you. Now, to end it all, I have my own idea of what creative attitude to translation means to me as an individual and as a person, and that's this. But I go one step further. I can now offer it in 3 languages. That was it, except to say thank you. And before I go, I just want to pick up on one thing that Inga said earlier on. She mentioned the word entrepreneur. And it always reminds me, every time I do a presentation, this always seems to come up. I would like to quote George W. Bush, the famous American president of many years ago, who was not known for his linguistic skills. He was not known for his diplomacy. And he was once quoted as saying, "Don't talk to me about French entrepreneurs. The French don't even have a word for entrepreneur. Thank you.
So the previous speaker was speaking about the content marketing, promoting this kind. Do you use it in your system?
Content marketing? No. Not because there's anything wrong with it, but we've never need. We seem to find that people find us rather than us finding people. We're lucky. Okay, we live in a small country that's highly populated, so there's plenty of people looking for us. We don't spend a word on advertising on Google or anything like that. Most of our content promotion is word of mouth, and we're extremely lucky. If that stops, then I should be asking Inga for advice. But so far, that's not been necessary.
Еще есть какие-то вопросы у кого-то? If no one has a question, I have one, and that's a question for your agency head. So, yeah, that's great. In your agency owner opinion, is there any kind of correlation between the promotion skills that Ingo was talking about and actually the professional skills, the translation skills? Is there a concern at all that the more influencers we have on Instagram and on the web everywhere, the fewer actually professional translators we see?
Have you got another hour to listen? It's not something that I have experienced, but Inga was talking as an individual specifically and about her work as a lots, also with several hats, translator, blogger. No, we stick to, I suppose, to core activities in terms of translation. We do transcreation, which is different, but it's still within the framework of translation. So the wider approach, our box is so big we don't need to think outside of it, right? Because it contains all the things that we need, all the things that our clients need, and all the things. That's a cop-out answer. That's an excuse. I'm sorry, but no, we've not been aware of that. I forgot my last slide. Oh no, I was going to say that if anybody is interested in the workflow system that we use, I have a demonstration version, which I can't do it now, of course, but sometime this week. We're here all week. If you're interested in looking at that, it's a demo version, so you can actually play at being the client or the administrator or the translator. It's a system we built for ourselves. You're welcome to have a look at it, and we give it away free of charge for groups of up to 5 translators and 5 clients. Perhaps not that useful for you because it's in French, German, English and Dutch, but not in Russian or Ukrainian, the actual base itself. But you're welcome to have a look. It's what we develop for ourselves, and it saves us so much time. You can find us. We brought our house with us. We're over there in the woods. So anytime this week, if you're interested, bring along your device with internet connection and you can play.